It was one of those perfect afternoons that make you want to step outside and soak in the sunshine. The kind where the air feels warm but not too heavy and everything seems just right. For 9-year-old Maya, it was a day meant for adventure. She lived in a small house on the edge of Detroit, a place where life moves slower compared to the bustling city center. Her favorite thing to do? Ride her bike through the park near her home. It wasn't anything fancy, just an old blue bicycle with scuffed tires, but to Maya, it was freedom on two wheels. That Saturday, she woke up early, ate breakfast quickly, and grabbed her helmet before heading out. Her mom, who worked long hours at the hospital, had reminded her earlier in the week to stick to familiar paths and avoid going too far. "Stay safe," her mom always said, giving her a tight hug before leaving for work. But today something felt different. Maybe it was the way the sunlight danced between the trees or how quiet the streets were. Whatever it was, Maya decided to take a new route she'd never explored before, a narrow dirt trail. Tucked away behind the main park area, the trail started off peaceful enough. Birds chirped overhead, and the soft rustle of leaves filled the silence. Maya pedaled happily, humming a tune under her breath. She imagined herself as some sort of superhero, zooming through secret paths no one else knew about. But as she rounded a bend, the scene changed abruptly. Ahead of her, parked haphazardly along the path, were several motorcycles. Their chrome parts gleamed menacingly in the sunlight, and nearby stood a group of men dressed in leather jackets. Covered in patches and symbols Maya didn't recognize. Her heart skipped a beat. Something about them felt wrong. They weren't like the friendly neighbors she saw every day. These men looked rough, their faces hard and unsmiling. One of them noticed her immediately. He shouted something she couldn't quite hear, his voice sharp and angry. Startled, Maya froze for a second before instinct kicked in. She turned her bike around and started pedaling back the way she came, faster than she ever had before, but they weren't letting her go so easily. "Hey! Stop!" another voice barked. Maya glanced over her shoulder and saw one of the men pointing toward her. Panic surged through her chest. She pumped her legs harder, gripping the handlebars tightly. Behind her, she heard shouts turning into laughter. But there was nothing funny about what happened next. Two large dogs burst onto the trail, sprinting after her with terrifying speed. Pit bulls, their muscles rippling beneath their short fur, snarling and barking like wild animals. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She tried to pedal faster, but her legs burned with exhaustion. The dogs closed the distance between them, in seconds cutting her off and forcing her to stop. Backed against a tree, she held her arms over her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. The dogs circled her, snapping their jaws dangerously close to her body. Time seemed to slow down. Every bark echoed in her ears, every growl sent shivers down her spine. She screamed for help, hoping anyone would come. But the only people around were the men who had set the dogs loose. They stood a few feet away, watching the scene unfold without stepping in. Some laughed. Others recorded videos on their phones. To them, it was entertainment. To Maya, it was sheer terror. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, one of the men whistled sharply. The dogs hesitated, then trotted back to their owners, leaving Maya trembling against the tree. She stayed there for a moment, catching her breath and trying to process what had just happened. When she finally found the strength to move, she climbed back onto her bike and rode away as fast as she could. Her legs shaking with every pedal stroke. By the time she reached home, she was physically and emotionally drained. Her knees were scraped from falling off her bike during the chase, and her hands were scratched from clutching branches while trying to protect herself. But it was the look in her eyes that broke her mother's heart when she walked through the door. Wide, scared, and full of confusion, Maya told her mom everything that had happened. Her mom listened silently, her face growing paler with each word. Word spread quickly in their tight-knit community. Neighbors gathered outside their house, offering support and vowing to keep an eye out for troublemakers. Someone had filmed part of the incident on their phone and posted it online. Within hours, the video went viral. People across the country watched in disbelief as a little girl was cornered by aggressive dogs. All because she accidentally crossed paths with a dangerous gang. The comments section exploded with outrage. Parents expressed anger and fear, imagining what might have happened if things had gone worse. Local news stations picked up the story, broadcasting interviews with witnesses and community leaders. Everyone wanted answers. Who were these men? Why would they do such a thing? And most importantly, why hadn't anyone stopped them sooner? As the days passed, Maya struggled to return to normalcy. Simple tasks like riding her bike or even walking to the mailbox filled her with anxiety. Nightmares kept her awake, replaying the snarls and barks in vivid detail. Her mom did her best to comfort her, but money was tight and therapy sessions were expensive. They felt trapped, unsure of where to turn or how to make things better. Little did they know, thousands of miles away, two unlikely heroes were already watching and planning their next move. The video of the little girl being chased by dogs spread like wildfire. By the next morning, it wasn't just a local story anymore. It was everywhere. News anchors talked about it on TV, radio shows debated who was to blame, and social media lit up with hashtags calling for justice. People couldn't stop talking about it. How could something so cruel happen in broad daylight? Why would anyone target a child like that? For Maya's family, this sudden attention was overwhelming. On one hand, they were grateful that people cared. On the other, they felt exposed, like their private pain had been thrown into the spotlight for everyone to see. Strangers started showing up at their door, dropping off food, toys, and notes of encouragement. Reporters camped outside their house, shoving microphones in their faces and asking questions Maya's mom didn't know how to answer. "What do you want to say to the men who did this?" one reporter asked her as she tried to carry groceries. Inside, she just shook her head and closed the door. Inside the house, things weren't much better. Maya stayed glued to her mom's side, afraid to leave even for a moment. Her once bright eyes now looked hollow, weighed down by fear and confusion. At night, she would wake up screaming, reliving the sound of those barking dogs over and over. Again, her mom sat beside her bed, holding her hand and whispering reassurances, but nothing seemed to help. The trauma lingered, heavy and unshakable. Meanwhile, the police were under immense pressure to act. The city's mayor held a press conference, promising that no stone would be left unturned in bringing the perpetrators to justice. Detectives combed through the park where the incident happened, collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. They issued warrants for the arrest of several members of the biker gang known locally as the Iron Vultures. This group had been causing trouble for years, running illegal operations and intimidating anyone who crossed their path. But until now, no one had pushed hard enough to shut them down. As the investigation unfolded, more disturbing details came to light. Neighbors revealed that the gang often used the park as a meeting spot, knowing it was rarely patrolled by law enforcement. Some claimed they'd seen the same pit bulls roaming loose before, chasing joggers and cyclists out of the area. Others admitted they'd been too scared to report anything, fearing retaliation if they spoke up. It painted a grim picture of a community living in fear, unwilling or unable to stand up against the violence happening right under their noses. But not everyone stayed silent. A grassroots movement began to form, led by parents and teachers who refused to let this incident slide. Flyers went up around town, urging people to attend a rally at the park. Hundreds showed up, carrying signs that read, "Protect our kids," and "Justice for the little girl." Speakers took turns addressing the crowd, sharing stories of their own encounters with the gang and demanding stricter laws to keep public spaces safe. Maya's mom stood quietly at the back, clutching her daughter's hand tightly. She hadn't planned to speak, but when someone handed her a microphone, she stepped forward. "I never thought something like this could happen to us," she said, her voice trembling. "My baby girl just wanted to ride her bike. That's all. And now she can't even sleep without nightmares." Tears streamed down her face as the crowd listened in silence. "We're not rich. We don't have fancy lawyers or connections. All we want is for our children to grow up safe." "Is that too much to ask?" Her words struck a chord. People nodded, some wiping away tears of their own. After the rally, a GoFundMe page was set up to help cover Maya's therapy costs and legal Fees. Donations poured in from all over the country, small amounts from ordinary people who wanted to make a difference. For the first time since the attack, Maya's mom felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they wouldn't have to face this alone. Back at the police station, detectives worked tirelessly to build a case against the gang. Surveillance footage from nearby businesses helped identify key members involved in the incident. Officers conducted raids on suspected hideouts, seizing weapons, stolen goods, and documents linking the gang to larger criminal networks. Each new discovery brought them closer to dismantling the operation entirely. Still, progress was slow. Legal proceedings are complicated, especially when dealing with organized crime. Maya's mom grew frustrated waiting for answers. Every day felt like an eternity, and she worried about how long her daughter could hold on. Therapy sessions helped, but Maya remained withdrawn, flinching at loud noises and avoiding places she used to love. Her mom tried to keep things normal, cooking her favorite meals, reading bedtime stories, but it was clear that life had changed forever. One evening, as they sat together on the couch watching TV, a news segment caught their attention. Two familiar faces appeared on screen: Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and John Cena. Both wrestlers turned actors had made headlines earlier in the week after speaking out about the incident. They called it unacceptable and vowed to support the family however they could. Hearing their names gave Maya's mom pause. Celebrities saying kind words was one thing, but what could they really do? She didn't have to wait long to find out. A few days later, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. On the other end was a cheerful voice introducing itself as someone from The Rock's foundation. He explained that he and John Cena wanted to meet with them personally to offer resources, guidance, and whatever else they needed to get through this nightmare. At first, Maya's mom thought it was a prank. Who calls out of the blue like that? But when she hung up and saw emails confirming the offer, she broke down in tears for the first time in weeks. They were tears of relief. That night, as Maya drifted off to sleep, her mom whispered softly, "Things are going to be okay, I promise." She didn't know exactly how yet, but for the first time in a long time, she believed it, and somewhere far away, two men were already making plans to turn those words into reality. The phone call changed everything. It wasn't just some random act of kindness, it felt personal, like someone had finally heard their cries for help and decided to step in. Maya's mom replayed the conversation in her head over and over, still trying to wrap her mind around it. The Rock, John Cena, these weren't just celebrities. They were larger-than-life figures who inspired millions. And now, somehow, they were stepping into her family's life. A few days later, the moment arrived. The foundation set up a private Zoom meeting between Maya, her mom, The Rock, and John Cena. Maya was nervous at first. She had never talked to anyone famous before, but both men went out of their way to make her feel comfortable. The Rock opened with his trademark charm, cracking jokes that made Maya giggle despite herself. "You know," he said with a grin, "I've faced some tough opponents in my time, but I think you're tougher than all of them combined, John." Cena followed up with words of encouragement, his calm demeanor putting everyone at ease. "What happened to you was wrong," he told Maya gently. "But let me tell you something, you're not alone anymore. We're here to help you fight back." His voice carried a warmth that made Maya's mom choke up. She hadn't realized how much she needed to hear those words until they were spoken aloud. As the conversation continued, the two men laid out their plan. First, they would cover all of Maya's therapy costs, connecting her with top mental health professionals who specialized in trauma recovery. Second, they offered to hire a high-profile attorney to represent the family during legal proceedings against the gang. Finally, and this part made Maya's eyes light up, they invited her to visit WE headquarters for a special meet and greet. Not only would she get to see behind the scenes of her favorite wrestling shows, but she'd also have the chance to ring the opening bell at an upcoming event. For Maya, it was like stepping into a dream. Wrestling had always been her secret passion, something she watched late at night when she couldn't sleep. Seeing her heroes on screen gave her courage when real life felt too hard to handle. Now here they were, reaching out to her directly, treating her like family. When the call ended, she hugged her mom tightly, tears streaming down her face. For the first time since the attack, she felt seen not as a victim, but as someone worthy of love and support. Over the next few weeks, things started moving quickly. The Rock and John Cena kept their promises, setting wheels in motion that transformed the family situation almost overnight. Therapists began working with Maya, helping her process the fear and anger that had taken root inside her. Her nightmares became less frequent, replaced by dreams of brighter days ahead. Meanwhile, the attorney they hired filed lawsuits against the gang members involved in the incident, ensuring no detail was overlooked. With such a strong legal team on their side, Maya's mom finally felt like justice might actually be within reach, but perhaps the biggest change came from the attention the story received after The Rock and John Cena got involved. Their public statements reignited the national conversation, drawing even more support for Maya and her family. Social media buzzed with hashtags like #JusticeForMaya and #StandWithTheBrave. People shared stories of their own struggles with fear and resilience, creating a sense of solidarity that stretched far beyond Detroit. Local businesses donated gift cards and supplies, while schools organized fundraisers to contribute to the GoFundMe page. Strangers mailed letters of encouragement, filling the family's mailbox with hope instead of bills. One letter stood out in particular. It came from a woman who said she had survived a similar ordeal as a child. "I know how heavy it feels to carry that kind of pain," she wrote, "but I also know how strong you are for surviving it. Keep fighting, little warrior. You're inspiring people you'll never even meet." Maya read the note over and over, clutching it like a treasure. For the first time, she began to see herself differently, not as a scared little girl, but as someone capable of overcoming incredible challenges. As preparations for the WWD ramped up, excitement bubbled through the household. Maya's mom surprised her with a custom shirt featuring both wrestlers' logos, along with the phrase "once scared, now unstoppable." They spent hours practicing what she would say when she met them in person, rehearsing lines until Maya felt confident enough to speak without stumbling. Her mom recorded videos of these practice sessions, laughing through happy tears as she watched her daughter come alive again. The day of the trip arrived faster than anyone expected. Dressed in her new shirt and clutching a notebook filled with questions for her heroes, Maya boarded a plane for the first time in her life. Her mom held her hand tightly throughout the flight, whispering reminders to breathe whenever turbulence hit. By the time they landed, Maya's nerves had given way to pure exhilaration. This was it. The moment she'd been waiting for. The headquarters turned out to be everything Maya imagined and more. Bright lights illuminated every corner, and the air buzzed with energy. Staff members greeted her like royalty, showing her around the facilities and explaining how matches were planned and executed. She even got to sit in the announcer's chair, pretending to call a match while cameras rolled in the background. But the highlight came when she finally met The Rock and John Cena in person. Both men scooped her into bear hugs, lifting her off the ground as if she were part of their own family. "You ready to show the world what bravery looks like?" The Rock asked, handing her the ceremonial bell used to kick off events. Maya nodded, gripping the rope with both hands. As the crowd gathered around, cheering wildly, she took a deep breath and rang the bell with all her might. The sound echoed through the arena, loud and clear, a symbol of triumph over fear, of standing tall even when the odds seemed impossible. Back home, footage of the event went viral once again. People marveled at how far Maya had come, marveling at her strength and determination. What started as a terrifying encounter in the park had become a story of resilience and hope, thanks in large part to the unwavering support of two unlikely heroes. For Maya's mom, watching her daughter smile so brightly on stage brought a wave of gratitude she hadn't felt in years. Against all odds, they had found light in the darkness, and they weren't letting go anytime soon. The momentum from Maya's story didn't slow down after her visit to WWE headquarters. If anything, it grew stronger. The video of her ringing the opening bell at the wrestling event went viral almost instantly. racking up millions of views within hours. People couldn't get enough of her courage. Comments poured in from all over the world, messages of admiration, encouragement, and solidarity. "This little girl is a hero," one person wrote. Another added, "She's teaching us all how to be brave." For the first time, Maya began to see herself not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of hope for others. Meanwhile, back in Detroit, the legal battle against the biker gang was heating up. With the high-profile attorney hired by The Rock and John Cena leading the charge, the case moved faster than anyone expected. Evidence piled up: surveillance footage, witness testimonies, confiscated weapons, and documents linking the gang to other crimes across the state. The pressure on law enforcement intensified, and federal agents joined the investigation, turning what had started as a local incident into a nationwide crackdown on organized crime. The trial became a media spectacle. Reporters packed the courtroom every day, eager to capture every detail. Maya's mom sat stoically in the front row, holding her daughter's hand tightly. She knew this wouldn't be easy for either of them, but she also knew they couldn't back down now. This wasn't just about getting justice for Maya. It was about sending a message that no one could terrorize innocent people without facing consequences. Maya testified via video link, sparing her from having to face the defendants directly. Her voice trembled at first, but she found strength in the familiar faces watching her from the screen: her mom, her therapist, and even The Rock and John Cena, who had flown in to show their support. As she recounted the events of that fateful day in the park, the courtroom fell silent. You could hear a pin drop as jurors listened intently, some visibly shaken by her words. When she finished speaking, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The defense tried to argue that the dogs were simply guarding their territory, and that the entire incident was blown out of proportion. But their excuses fell flat when prosecutors presented damning evidence showing the gang's history of intimidation and violence. Witnesses described how the group had used fear tactics to control the area, targeting anyone who dared cross them. One neighbor recounted seeing the same pit bulls chase away joggers and cyclists, while another revealed how the gang had threatened him for reporting suspicious activity to the police. By the time closing arguments rolled around, it was clear which way the verdict would go. The judge delivered a scathing rebuke to the defendants, calling their actions cowardly and despicable. Each member received hefty prison sentences, along with fines so large they'd struggle to pay them off even decades later. Animal cruelty charges were added for the handlers of the pit bulls, ensuring the dogs themselves would be rehomed and rehabilitated rather than euthanized. The courtroom erupted in applause when the verdict was read aloud. Maya's mom hugged her tightly, tears streaming down her face. Outside, supporters gathered, cheering and chanting Maya's name. Strangers approached the family, offering hugs and words of gratitude. "You did this," one woman said to Maya. "You stood up when so many others stayed silent." But the victory wasn't just personal, it sparked broader change. Local lawmakers introduced new legislation aimed at cracking down on gang activity and protecting public spaces like parks. Schools launched programs to teach kids about safety and resilience, using Maya's story as an example of how to overcome adversity. Even national organizations took notice, partnering with The Rock and John Cena's foundations to create initiatives focused on mental health awareness and community empowerment. For Maya, life slowly began returning to normal, or at least a new version of it. Therapy sessions helped her process the trauma, allowing her to reclaim parts of herself she thought were lost forever. She started riding her bike again, sticking to familiar paths where neighbors waved hello and kept watchful eyes. At school, teachers noticed a shift in her confidence. She raised her hand more often, participated in class discussions, and even joined the art club, channeling her emotions into colorful drawings and paintings. Her relationship with The Rock and John Cena remained strong too. They checked in regularly, sending care packages and handwritten notes reminding her how proud they were of her progress. During one particularly tough week, John Cena called just to chat, sharing stories about his own struggles growing up and how he learned to push through fear. "You're stronger than you think," he told her. "And don't ever forget that." You've got a whole team rooting for you. Inspired by their kindness, Maya decided to pay it forward. She began writing letters to other children who had experienced trauma, offering advice and encouragement based on her own journey. "It's okay to feel scared," she wrote in one note, "but remember you're not alone. There are people who care about you, even if you can't see them right now." Her words resonated deeply, earning praise from counselors and parents alike. As months turned into a year, Maya's transformation became undeniable. Gone was the timid, frightened girl who once hid behind trees and avoided strangers. In her place stood a confident young advocate determined to make a difference. She started giving interviews alongside her mom, speaking candidly about the importance of standing up against injustice and supporting victims of violence. Her story appeared in magazines, newspapers, and TV shows, reaching audiences far beyond her hometown. One of the most memorable moments came when she addressed a youth empowerment summit in Washington, D.C., invited by a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping kids thrive despite challenging circumstances. Standing on stage in front of hundreds of attendees, Maya shared her experience with raw honesty and heartfelt passion. "I used to think being brave meant never feeling afraid," she said, her voice steady and clear. "But now I know it means feeling afraid and doing what's right anyway. We're all braver than we think, we just need someone to remind us." The crowd erupted in applause, giving her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Cameras flashed as reporters rushed to capture the moment, cementing her status as a role model for generations to come. Backstage afterward, The Rock and John Cena greeted her with proud smiles, congratulating her on a speech well delivered. "That was incredible," The Rock said, wrapping her in a bear hug. "You're changing the world, kid." And maybe she really was. Because Maya's story wasn't just about surviving an attack or winning a court case. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, building bridges instead of walls, and proving that even the smallest voices can spark the biggest changes. Every time she spoke, every time she smiled, every time she rode her bike down a sunny street, she reminded the world of something important. No matter how dark things seem, there's always a way to rise above. As she walked off stage that night, surrounded by cheering fans and flashing lights, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she knew she wouldn't have to walk it alone. And sometimes that made all the difference. Months turned into years, and Maya's life continued to evolve in ways she never imagined. What had started as a terrifying incident in the park became the foundation for something much bigger, a mission to inspire others and create change. She wasn't just the girl who was chased by dogs anymore. Now, she was a beacon of hope, someone who reminded people that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance to rise. Her journey toward healing wasn't linear. It came with setbacks and challenges, but every step forward brought her closer to finding her true self. Therapy sessions helped her unpack the trauma, teaching her how to manage anxiety and rebuild trust in the world around her. Her mom noticed subtle changes over time. Maya laughed more freely, played outside without hesitation, and spoke up when something didn't feel right. It wasn't easy, but she worked hard at it, determined not to let fear control her life. One day, while doodling in her notebook during a quiet afternoon, an idea struck her. Why not write a book? She loved telling stories, and this one felt important, not just for herself, but for other kids who might be going through similar struggles. With her mom's encouragement, she began working on a children's story inspired by her own experience. The main character would be a brave little girl who loved riding her bike, faced a scary situation, and learned to keep moving forward despite everything. She called it Maya Rides On. Writing it wasn't easy. There were days when the memories felt too raw, too painful, but she pushed through, channeling her emotions into words and illustrations. When she finished the first draft, she showed it to The Rock and John Cena, who immediately offered their support. They connected her with a publisher, and within months, the book was ready for release. The launch event took place at a local library packed with families, friends, and supporters. Kids sat cross-legged on the floor, wide-eyed as Maya read aloud from her book. Her voice wavered at times, especially during the parts about the attack, but she powered through, drawing strength from the audience's silence and focus. By the end, the room erupted in applause, with several parents wiping away tears. One little boy approached her afterward, clutching his copy of the book. "I'm scared sometimes, too," he admitted softly. "But your story makes me think. I can be brave." That moment stayed with Maya long after the event ended. Hearing those words reinforced why she had written the book in the first place, not for fame or recognition, but to let others know they weren't alone. Over the next few months, she visited schools, libraries, and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging kids to find courage in difficult times. Teachers reported seeing positive changes in their students, many of whom began opening up about their own fears and struggles. Parents thanked her for giving them tools to talk to their children about resilience and empathy. Her advocacy work expanded beyond storytelling. Inspired by the legislative changes sparked by her case, Maya teamed up with local organizations to promote safer public spaces. She helped design posters reminding people to report suspicious activity and spoke at town hall meetings about the importance of standing together against violence. Her efforts earned her awards and recognition, including a special commendation from the mayor of Detroit. But for Maya, the real reward was seeing tangible improvements in her community: more police patrols in parks, increased funding for youth programs, and a growing sense of unity among neighbors. Through it all, The Rock and John Cena remained steadfast supporters, cheering her on from afar and occasionally surprising her with visits or video calls. During one such call, John Cena asked her what she wanted most for the future. Without hesitation, Maya replied, "I want to help kids feel safe again. I don't ever want anyone to feel the way I did that day in the park." Her determination resonated deeply, not just with her mentors, but with everyone who crossed her path. People often remarked on how mature she seemed for her age, but Maya didn't see it that way. To her, maturity wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about learning from mistakes, leaning on others when needed, and using your pain to fuel purpose. As she entered her teenage years, Maya's confidence only grew stronger. She joined the debate team at school, honing her public speaking skills and advocating for policies that supported marginalized communities. She volunteered at animal shelters, working with pit bulls and other misunderstood breeds to combat stereotypes perpetuated by incidents like hers. And she continued writing, publishing essays and articles that challenged readers to confront injustice and embrace kindness. One of her proudest achievements came when she was invited to speak at a national conference focused on child safety and mental health. Standing on stage before thousands of attendees, she reflected on how far she'd come since that fateful day in the park. "I used to think bravery meant never feeling afraid," she said, echoing her earlier speech. "But now I know it means feeling afraid and choosing to act anyway. It means asking for help when you need it and helping others when they need you. It means believing in yourself, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise." Her words resonated deeply, earning her a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. Cameras flashed as reporters rushed to capture the moment, cementing her status as a role model for generations to come. Backstage afterward, The Rock and John Cena greeted her with proud smiles, congratulating her on a speech well delivered. "That was incredible," The Rock said, wrapping her in a bear hug. "You're changing the world, kid." And maybe she really was. Because Maya's story wasn't just about surviving an attack or winning a court case. It was about finding strength in vulnerability, building bridges instead of walls, and proving that even the smallest voices can spark the biggest changes. Every time she spoke, every time she smiled, every time she rode her bike down a sunny street, she reminded the world of something important. No matter how dark things seem, there's always a way to rise above. As she walked off stage that night, surrounded by cheering fans and flashing lights, Maya felt a sense of peace she hadn't known before. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but she knew she wouldn't have to walk it alone. And sometimes that made all the difference.